All right, welcome back to another installment of the Jim Ryan Running Channel, the life of Jim Ryan. We've been looking at a bunch of Jim's races and picking his brain on it, really asking, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What have you seen God do since then? And it's been a great time together. Today, we're going to hop a couple of years later to 1967. This is a really awesome 1,500 meter race that we're going to look at. But before we do, just as we've been doing, we have some memorabilia up here. Just some things that have meant a lot to Jim, or really that God's allowed for him to do. And so what are the four things that we have up here in front?
These little brass medallions, I guess is what you would call them, is that when you set a world record, the International Athletic Federation, the IAAF, sends you the year, the date, the distance, the time, and that marks as a, if you will, memorabilia of what accomplished. So one of them is a world record at 1,500 meters at 3:33.1. One is the mile at 3:51.1, which is in the same year of 1967. In 1966 would have been the first world record at 3:51.3. And the last one is the half-mile record in 1966 at 1:44.9. So there are moments in time that are captured, if you will, in bronze with white print. And I think the way I want to look at this, if I may, is that, again, I never think these would have happened in my life as a young boy. Now that they have, I want to give proper credit that, God gave me this wonderful talent. He gave me a great coach who was very inspirational, very demanding, but also a wonderful mentor, if you will, along the way. And I want to say this as well. For all the runners and those who are interested in athletics, the lessons you learn on athletics will apply to your life in the years ahead. And I think that cannot be emphasized enough, is that you learn principles and values and characteristics. Hard work does have good fruit, if you will. It'll have results. The things you go through in training are invaluable. And so let God work those things in your life for His glory and to your benefit, and you will have an amazing life.
Yeah, it's amazing that running was your career, but in many ways for most of you watching, whether running is a career for you or just a season in life, the lessons you learn are going to, you're going to take them with you. That hard work, that discipline, caring for others, pursuing the goals that God's placed on your heart, all really cool things. One more thing, we've got some photos here in the back. Do you mind kind of walking us through?
I'll walk you through. The one over my shoulder, let me just say this too, as a result of the, if you will, interest in my career, there were lots of photographs. So this is just a small sampling of them, but the one behind me on the far right, if you will, over my shoulder, is my fall in the Munich Olympics. It's a series of photos showing I'm on the way down. I was tripped by another runner behind me. He caught my trail leg in the opening round of the 1,500 meters for the Munich Olympics. I petitioned for reinstatement to the International Olympic Committee, not only for myself, but the other two that fell. And their response was, why don't you come back in 4 years and try again? I'm grateful I was a Christian, because that could have been, Ann and I had decided it wouldn't be, but that could have been a very bitter point in my life. But I learned out of that a valuable lesson on forgiveness. Life doesn't have to end on the track at that point, and it didn't. But that's the fall in Munich. The one next to it is me running in a race in Berkeley, California. And if you look very, very hard, it'll be hard to see that in the crowd. Ann is in there. She's in there cheering. She was there with her family. Berkeley, 1966, for the first world record that I set at 51.3. And the next one over is in Bakersfield. It's down the finish straightaway. Time was 3:51.1. It was Bakersfield. That was on what was called a baked clay track. Now, those tracks were fast if you wanted the early races, but as the races went along, the footing became very soft and not very fast. And so when you watch the video of the race, you can see me wandering around, if you will, on the inside lane, trying to find good footing. And in a couple places, I almost stepped on the curb, trying to find some footing that would help me run faster. The last picture in color is my freshman year, 1966, at the AAU Championships in New York City. I won that race my first time at the AAU Championships in New York, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It's so funny, New York is an interesting crowd to run before, because it was a good performance. After it was over, somebody put up a sign, Ryan for president. So you never know what the crowd's going to say. Yeah. But that's what these pictures are. They're capturing a moment, and I'm grateful for them.
That's really cool. We also have your journal here that we'll talk about in a second, but just really cool pieces to look back at. for memory's sake and to really praise God for what he's done. In this race we're going to look at today, this is 1967. We are in Los Angeles.
Yes.
I'm not going to spoil what happens. You could probably see it on the screen in the title, but what is this race that we're about to watch, and what are some things leading up to it that are important to know?
So this is the first race with me coming out of altitude. Now, altitude was something I had been exposed to the year before, knowing that it was going to be difficult in Mexico City. And so we went up to Alamosa, Colorado, which is almost the exact same altitude as Mexico City. So we spent time during the summer training, and I knew from the experience, in fact, I went there after running in Los Angeles a 353 mile, thinking going into Alamosa, a couple of days rest after the LA race, that I could probably run maybe 4:02 if I had any trouble, because I was rested, so to speak. And I was soon to discover altitude is not friendly to sea level people. I got through the first 600 and stopped. And I went over to talk to Jack Daniels, who was helping me, Dr. Daniels, and he encouraged me we'd slow the pace down and run the race completely. And so I did. I ran, I think it was 4:20, 4:25, and I thought I was going to die. You couldn't breathe.
Yeah,
but that became the first realization of what altitude was going to be like. Very challenging. The air is thinner. It's challenging because, again, you don't live at 7,200 feet. Yeah. So leading into 1967, I've gone to altitude. I've had the race in Bakersfield where I ran 351, so knew I was running well by the grace of God. And so now I'm headed into Los Angeles at a distance of 1,500 meters against one of my very strongest competitors, Kip Keino of Kenya. And so the scene is, I'm coming out of altitude. Now, the week before, as I'm coming out, I look in my journal. And by the way, I encourage young athletes, and most of them do it electronically. These are my diaries, if you will, journals in 1963, 64. This is the one for 1967. Write down your workouts. You'll forget them at some point. The thoughts you have as to how you felt, what you felt you accomplished, all of those things become helpful for you in strategizing and planning. And as I look back now, the week before going down to Los Angeles to run, for example, that afternoon in a workout on June 26th, I was running 600s at 131 and 130, which were not really fast, but at altitude it was very challenging. I did some 400s and 300s and 200s, and I got through all of that, and I was having some tremendous stomach issues because of the altitude issue. And so I went out of altitude really tired. We got down to Los Angeles early, and I remember getting there maybe 3 days before the race, and all I did, I slept. I didn't do anything but sleep, and hoping that I would feel better by the time the race actually took place. And so now we're ready for the race on, what is it, June?
July
8th,
I think somewhere around there. I would assume it's very hot. Right, it's
very hot.
Probably in the 90s. This is an interesting race. It's kind of country v. country race. Can you explain a little bit about what that was?
Well, it's called the British Commonwealth. So the athletes from all over the world, British Commonwealth versus the United States, coming in an open competition. So that, for example, in my race, I had runners from Kenya, I had runners from Canada, we had the United States. It was an accumulation of lots of different people running at 1,500 meters. With the test now to be who could run really what. Yeah. And so we're off. I knew Kano was going to be my strongest competitor, but it was a young man from Canada who took the pace out the first lap at about 60 seconds. So here we are, the race is starting.
Yeah, we've got some clips from the race. We don't have the whole thing, but we've got some good snippets. So we're gonna hop into that right now. And let's do it.
So the race begins again on the floor of the Coliseum. I think the temperature was actually 95 degrees, almost 100. And you'll see there were a group of us together. I'm kind of on the inside lane. You can identify Kano. He's about second from the back. Nobody really wanted to lead the race. And yet I think it was Dave Bailey from Canada takes the pace in a very reasonable pace of 60 seconds. Now at this point, we've gone by the 400. It's at 60 seconds. Kano is in second now. And he's decided now that he doesn't want to have a slow pace. So he pops in a 58-second quarter, and I move right along with him, knowing that we're going to have quite a fast race, but not sure what it's really going to eventually lead into. As you just saw at that moment, there was a great crowd. And now I've gone back. We've got 300 yards to go in the race. I've moved past Kano, and amazingly, I'm still feeling very strong. I'm rested enough from altitude. It turns out the last 400 was the equivalent of 50 seconds. So it was really fast on a track that was not known for being accommodating for fast running. Sure. but we finished the race in 3:33.1. It was a world record. And there you can see the crowd responding a little bit to what's happening. I'm turning around, going back looking for Kano to congratulate him.
And it was a world record by 2.5 seconds.
Yes, it was.
At that time, which is huge for that distance. What a cool thing. So as you're looking back at your journal, we're looking a little bit here as you reflect on this period of your life. This is next year's Mexico City.
That's correct.
You're kind of getting closer into the prime of your career now.
I am.
Following things like this, as you look back, what are some things that you can take with you that you can share with those watching?
I think one of the most important things that I can share with you is pray about everything, ask for great dreams, be willing to try them, and then run with some confidence. I think one thing I'd like to leave with our listeners today, especially for the young runners, is don't be afraid to try something you've never done before. One thing we emphasize in the Jim Ryan Running Camp is that while you're there to run, and we offer a challenge to you to dream big, it may be that you have talents in other areas besides running. Don't be afraid to try those. You may become a pastor, you may be a scientist, you may discover a cure for cancer, things that haven't happened now, but be willing to experiment. I think that's one thing that Coach Timmons really emphasized, not just to me, but for all of his athletes. Take the challenge, be courageous, give it a try, don't be afraid. Again, everybody's going to experience some failure in their life. You might as well fail at something you like, knowing that failure is a temporary detour to success. And so, let it be an adventure. I think sometimes we forget, and I can say that even in my life, you look at these races, and they are marvelous accomplishments, and I thank God for them, but there was no guarantee that when you move at a certain point that you're going to have finished all the way to the finish line. So remember that life is an adventure, and it's to be lived, not to be feared, but look at it as a challenge that opens new avenues, new experiences, new people. One of the things that we talk about in camp is not only the challenge of a goal, but the journey along the way. And for me, the journey many times was seeing things that I had never expected to see. For example, when I was on the U.S. team in high school competing against the Polish national team, after the races were over, I went and ran through parts of Warsaw, Poland. And it was close enough after World War II, you still had some of the buildings that had cannon holes in the wall from the war. It was a quick reminder of just the tragedy went on not too many years past, earlier in World War II. But that's part of my journey. What's your journey? What are the adventures? Write them down so you won't forget them, because with time they have a tendency to blur and be forgotten.
Yeah, and that's really good. If you didn't take a risk to start training at altitude, give it a go. Something that was new for you in that sense, right? If you didn't take a risk to do it, you wouldn't have these stories. And one of the things that I know is kind of a theme for you, but I think is a theme for all of our viewers as well, is having faith in the midst of suffering. Yeah. Sometimes I think, especially people, my generation, perhaps your generation if you're watching, we don't like to do both of those things. We will say we have faith, but then as soon as suffering comes along, we run the other direction. And so I think it's really important to remember that as we look to God to trust Him with our goals, that means we're going to walk through difficult things. We're going to have to get out of our comfort zone. But in that process, we see God really begin to change our hearts and do amazing things. And so don't be afraid of the suffering. Anything you want to add on that?
I will add to that something that I learned through my career as a runner and as a Christian. For example, when we did some of the impossible things like 40 times a 440 in sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, is that one of the things that I would use as a treasure to get there is that when I got to the one that was getting really hard, would say all were, I'd tell myself, if I can just do this one, I can get one more. I'm sure that being willing to challenge that next step, knowing that it may be a problem, but that's that faith aspect. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. You don't always see them, but the recognition that it's a step that you have to take at some point, and with that, your faith will grow, and so your trust and everything else will grow as well.
Yeah, when you take ownership of that,
yes,
right, it grows your faith in the Lord and what He has for you. Jim, anything else that you want to point out?
Just go for the adventure. Let life be an adventure. Don't be afraid of it. Accept the gifts God's given you and recognize that He's pulling for you.
Yeah. Well, if you really want to meet Jim and to hear more from him, as well as his family and some other counselors and some other high school runners as well, the Jim Ryan Running Camp is coming fast. Registration is open. It's been open for a while. We've got spots available for our 2 weeks of camp in beautiful Colorado. It's going to be an amazing time. And so make sure to sign up. We're going to put a link above our heads. We're going to put a link in the description below for you to read more about camp and to sign up. Don't miss out on getting to hear from Jim more and to grow in your understanding of being a runner, a holistic runner, and also learn about Jesus in the process.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks for watching. These were our 3 episodes over here in Tampa, Florida. We're surely going to be doing more in the future.
We will.
But Jim, thanks for talking through some of
Noah,
your
thank you.
experiences.
And God bless all of you for listening.
God bless. Have a great rest of your day.